At the dawn of the day, all the monkeys at Suvela went to visit Rama when they found, to their great surprise, that the cart disappeared with Rama and Lakshmana. They saw the excavation and the footprints of the demons, from which they concluded that the demons had carried off the princess through that hollow. All the monkeys were greatly alarmed and did not know what to do. But in the meantime, Vibhishana came and told them not to make a noise about it, because if Ravana knew of their position, he would attack them and kill them all in no time. The monkeys with Vibhishana met together and asked Maruti whether he could go through the excavation and trace the whereabouts of Rama and Lakshmana. Even at the risk of my life, I will get Rama and Lakshmana back, replied Maruti. Having thus spoken, Maruti entered the excavation with Nala, Nila, Angada, and Jambavant and went through it to the seashore half dead, where they refreshed themselves with a fresh breeze. Looking at the large number of the demons, they disguised themselves as fakirs and asked the monsters to show them the way that led to Mahikavati. The demons did not listen to them and prevented them from proceeding further, when Maruti got indignant and threw them into the sea with his tail. Makaradwaja was greatly incensed and combated with Maruti, but the latter flung him down and sat on his chest. Makaradwaja was alarmed when Maruti called upon him to name the espouser of his cause. If my father, Maruti, were here, said Makaradwaja, he would kill you and save my life. As soon as the demon mentioned the name of Maruti, the latter was startled and getting up from his chest said, "My name is Maruti. I am a brahmachari. And how do you say that I am your father? Just give me an account of how you were born to me." "When you burned Lanka," replied Makaradwaja, "you threw into the sea your sweat, which my mother, a Magari, swallowed up, and of that sweat I was born to you." Maruti was astonished at the account given by Makaradwaja and blessed him. When the Magari came to see the monkey and said to him, "When you came here last time, you had a large size, but I now find that your form is very small. I doubt whether you are that Maruti whom I had seen." Whereupon Maruti assumed his former form and removed her doubt. He then acquainted her with what had happened to Rama when she said, "Ahiravana and Mahiravana are two brothers. They are wicked and treacherous demons. I know that they have carried off Rama and Lakshmana to Mahikavati, and they will sacrifice them to their goddess tomorrow. I therefore advise you to go and hide yourself in the temple of the goddess, where you will find both the princes." "Have patience," replied Maruti. "I will kill all the demons and give Mahikavati to your son." "Mahikavati," continued the Magari, "is at a distance of 13 yojans, and to reach there you will have to cross a vast sea, which you will not be able to do. I therefore beg you to sit with your companions in my mouth, and I will convey you to that place." Nala, Nila, Angad, and Jambavant were afraid, as they thought that the Magari might swallow them up on their way to Mahikavati. They therefore refused her kind offer and stayed on the seashore, while Maruti alone jumped over the sea and immediately reached Mahikavati, where he became as small as an atom and entered the temple of the goddess. As soon as he saw the goddess, he put her into a drain and, assuming her form, sat in her place. The goddess was frightened and did not speak a word for fear of life. The demons, as usual, made offerings to the goddess, consisting of boiled rice, milk, butter, and other things, which Maruti swallowed up to his heart's content, and loudly said to the demons, "I am very much pleased with you, because you have brought today Rama and Lakshmana for my tiffin. Let me have them. Do not open the doors of the temple, because you will not be able to bear my power and lustre. I therefore command you to make opening to one of the walls of the temple and push them in through it, so that I may devour them with a great relish. Do not kill them." Believing that the goddess was much pleased with them, Ahiravana and Mahiravana removed the trance from Rama and Lakshmana and brought them to the temple. As directed by the goddess, they made an opening to one of the walls of the temple and pushed them in through it. Rama and Lakshmana were frightened at the sight of the goddess, who opened her mouth and said to them, I shall now devour you, as I am very hungry. But before I do that, name the espouser of your cause. Whereupon the princess replied, if Maruti were here, he would come to our rescue. We are now helpless and throw ourselves on your mercy. Maruti was moved with pity at the princess and immediately discovered himself to them. I am now without weapons, said Rama, and how can I kill the demons without them? You need not be afraid, continued Maruti. I shall get your weapons here. So saying, he brought the weapons and dhanush bans from Suvela. As princes were hungry, Maruti gave them to eat the butter and other things which he had preserved for them, and after they had appeased their hunger, he sat in the place of the goddess, hiding them behind his back, and loudly exclaimed, I am now ready to bless all my beloved demons one by one. Let Ahiravana come in first. Ahiravana was extremely glad, and as the goddess wanted him first, and without loss of time, he went in and stood before the deity, who trampled him under his foot and instantly killed him. As the demon did not come out for some time, the other demons outside the temple apprehended that there was some mischief in the temple and began to make inquiries about him, when Maruti broke open the doors of the temple and killed a great number of demons with his tail. Having been informed that his brother was killed by Maruti, Rama, and Lakshmana, Mahiravana commenced to fight with them. He let off arrows after arrows at his enemies, but they cut them off and let off an arrow and killed the demon with it. But to their great surprise, they found that every drop of the blood of the demon produced one Mahiravana. And when Rama killed all the Mahiravanas produced by all the drops of the first Mahiravana, the drops of so many Mahiravanas produced innumerable Mahiravanas, and thus the more Rama killed, the more Mahiravanas are getting produced. At last, Rama was confused and did not know what to do. Maruti went to Magari to acquaint him with the cause of the phenomenon. The Magari referred him to Chandraseni, wife of Ahiravana, and told him that she would tell him all about it. Whereupon Maruti called upon Chandraseni and implored her to tell him the cause of the phenomenon, when she said, I shall be very glad to tell you the cause of the phenomenon, but unless Rama marries me, I shall not tell you the cause. I am charmed with the prince, and if you promise me that you will make him marry me, I shall tell you the cause. Oh, yes, I can do it very easily, replied Maruti. Then give me your promise, continued Chandraseni. Maruti gave his promise to her when she said, Ahiravana performed a severe penance on account of which the god Shiva was pleased and blessed him, saying that every drop of the nectar in the kundas in Patal, if mixed with every drop of the blood of Mahiravana, it would produce one Mahiravana, and that the drops of the blood of Mahiravanas produced by such drops would multiply the Mahiravanas. So saying, he presented the demon with a string of brahmaras and told him that the brahmaras would supply his brother with the nectar at the time of a war. Now you see, these brahmaras, who are as big as mountains, go to Patal and sprinkle the nectar over the blood of the Mahiravanas, and consequently there is no end to them. I therefore tell you to go to Patal and kill all the brahmaras, so that the nectar may not be sprinkled over the blood of the Mahiravanas killed by Rama. As soon as Maruti knew the secret, he immediately went to Patal and killed the brahmaras except their chief, whose life was spared because he promised the monkey that he would be useful to him on some occasion. Having killed the brahmaras, Maruti returned to Rama and told him to let off arrows at the Mahiravanas. The prince accordingly did it and killed all the Mahiravanas. Immediately after this success, Maruti remembered the promise given by him to Chandraseni and said to himself, I do not know what I should do now. If I tell Rama to marry Chandraseni, he will never do so, because he has sworn that he will be faithful to his wife Sita. If I fail to fulfill the promise given by me to her, she will curse me to death. Maruti, however, made bold and told Rama all about the promise given by him to Chandraseni. I will not at all violate my oath, replied Rama. If you like, I can come to the place of Chandraseni and bless her. Yes, continued Maruti, you can do so. Thence, Maruti first came alone to Chandraseni and said to her, Rama will come tonight. Keep your manchaka ready for him, but I tell you one thing, that if Manchaka is broken by the weight of Rama, he will never marry you and will go directly home. I therefore tell you to order a strong Manchaka to be made. Chandraseni got a strong and beautiful Manchaka ready for Rama and sat there expecting the prince. Maruti sent the chief of the Brahmara without her knowledge to hollow the bedstead in such a manner that as soon as Rama sat on it, it would be broken to pieces. The Brahmara skillfully hollowed the whole of the Manchaka with his sting and went away. In the evening, Maruti, accompanied by Rama, came to Chandraseni, who received him and made him sit on the Manchaka. But no sooner did Rama sit on it than it was broken to pieces. Whereupon Rama immediately got up and began to walk towards his place, accompanied by Maruti, when Chandraseni indignantly exclaimed, Ah, monkey, thou art a great scoundrel. This is thy dodge. I will now curse thee to death. Maruti was alarmed when Rama went and pacified her, saying that he would marry her during his another incarnation and that she would be called Satyabhama. After all the demons were killed, Rama gave Mahikavati to Makaradwaja and returned to Suvela with Maruti and other monkeys. On the return of Rama to Suvela, Ravan said to his courtiers, There is no use of my living in this world without my beloved son Indrajit. I must now either kill Rama or kill myself. So saying, he let off arrows at Rama, which the latter cut off. But the prince was struck with one arrow when Vibhishana let off arrows at the demon king, who, boiled with rage, discharged at his brother a weapon called Brahmashakti. Lakshmana immediately cut it off when Ravana discharged another powerful weapon at the prince, but Maruti got hold of it before it struck him. To the great surprise of all, the weapon became a female in the hands of Maruti and said to him, Well, Maruti, you say that you are a brahmachari, and how do you touch a female? You will be sinful if you do not let me go. Maruti was greatly astonished at the female in his hands, and as soon as she uttered the word sin, he placed her on the ground, when she immediately became a weapon and, rushing upon Lakshmana, struck his head and chest, and consequently he fell down lifeless. Rama and all the kings were alarmed and much lamented for him. Ravana, elate with the success, returned to Lanka with exultation. Rama and the monkeys were in confusion and did not know what to do. All were discouraged and thought of leaving Suvela. Shortly after, Ravana again came to fight, when Rama, boiled with rage, let off arrows at him and the other demons and killed many of them. The demon king, being unable to overcome him, trembled from head to toe. He became mad, and the picture of Rama presented itself before him wherever he went. Having been frightened, he immediately returned to Lanka and told his wife Mandodari about it, when she said, My love, my dearest, even now restore Sita to Rama and be his friend. No, no, Ravana indignantly replied, That can never be done. I will either kill myself or kill Rama. Immediately after Mandodari had returned to her palace, he ordered the demons to dig an excavation in the ground. The excavation was accordingly dug, and in that excavation he performed a penance to get a Divyaratha from the god of fire and sat there in deep meditation. Rama grieved for his brother, and all the monkeys were alarmed. In the meantime, their physician Susena felt the pulse of Lakshmana and said, Lakshmana has still life in him, and he will be no more as soon as the sun rises in the morning. If the plant of nectar is brought here from Dronagiri in the course of the night, Lakshmana can be restored to life. Is there any warrior who can go 40 millions of yojans from this place and get the plant here in the course of the night? As soon as the physician put the question, Maruti said, I will just go and bring Dronagiri here in 3 hours. So saying, he took his leave of Rama and jumped from Suvela. He came to a hill called Madaranchela, which was close to Dronagiri. Maruti was very thirsty, and to refresh himself, he went to the abode of an old Brahman and requested him for a cup of water. This Brahman, who had a number of disciples with him, blessed Maruti and said, I am very glad to see you here. Kindly spend this night with us here and go in the morning. I cannot wait here for a minute, replied Maruti. I must do my business as soon as possible. When the Brahman found that Maruti did not comply with his wishes, he showed him a river. Maruti went there and stooped to take water when a Vivasi, a big as a mountain, came out to devour the monkey, who at once seized her by her legs and instantly killed her. When she was killed, a beautiful Devangana came out of her belly and threw herself at the feet of Maruti. She said, I was very beautiful, and being proud of my beauty, I laughed at a sage, who got indignant and cursed me, saying that I would be a Vivasi. I implored him to look upon me with mercy and make the curse a little milder, when he said that I would be released from the curse by your hands. I also inform you that the Brahman who lives in that abode is a demon called Kalnemi. He has been here for many days with his companions who were also demons. Ravana has sent this demon to detain you here, and when you refuse to comply with his wishes, he told you to go to that river in order that I might devour you. No sooner did the Devangana inform Maruti of this than he came back to the abode of the Brahman, when the latter said to the monkey, You ought to give me some presents, as I have pointed out the river to you. I shall be very glad to give you presents, replied Maruti. The demon stared at the monkey when the latter gave him blows as precious presents from him. The demon immediately assumed his original form, which was 5 yojans in length and breadth, and combated with Maruti, but the latter instantly killed him, and his companions fled to Lanka to inform Ravana of it. Maruti then went to Dronagiri and implored him to accompany him to Suvela, when the mountain said, Thou art a troublesome creature, go away. Thou fool, I will never come with thee. Maruti got enraged, and having lifted up the mountain with his tail, set out for Suvela. But on the road, Bharat, the third brother of Rama, who was living at Nandigram with the Rishi Vasistha, having looked at the bright and glittering mountain and having thought that it was something to entrap Rama and Lakshmana, let off an arrow at it, which passed through the mountain and pierced an arm of Maruti. The monkey, having been wounded, immediately came down with the mountain, repeating all the time the name of Rama. Bharat heard the repetition of Rama and asked him who he was, when the monkey informed him of what had happened to Lakshmana and said, What should I do now? How can I go to Suvela before the sunrise? If I do not reach Suvela with this mountain in the course of the night, Lakshmana will be no more. You need not be afraid, said Bharat. I shall send you and the mountain to Suvela in a minute, though it is at a distance of thousands of yojans from this place. Just sit on the top of my arrow, which will carry you and the mountain there in a minute. Maruti was surprised at the valor and power of Bharat and continued, You need not take so much trouble. I can do it myself. So saying, he took his leave of the prince and jumped from Nandigram with the mountain and came to Suvela. The physician immediately came and taking out the juice of the plant of nectar, applied it to Lakshmana and brought him to life. In like manner, he applied the juice to all the monkeys killed by Ravana and restored them to life. This having been done, Maruti took the mountain and placed it where it formerly stood. Ravana, however, dispatched 100 demons to snatch Dronagiri from the hands of Maruti, but the latter, holding the mountain in his one hand, killed them all with his other hand. Rama, Lakshmana, and the monkeys again prepared to fight with Ravana, but the demon king did not come out of Lanka for some time. In the meantime, Vibhishana came and said to Rama, Ravana is performing penance just like similar to Indrajit, and half of the Divyaratha has come out of fire. Unless you send some monkey warriors there and destroy the Havan made by him, you will not be able to overcome him. No sooner did Vibhishana inform Rama of this than the latter dispatched Maruti, Nala, Nila, Sugriva, and other monkeys to Lanka. They all went and searched the place where the demon king was performing the penance, but they could not find out the place. But in the meantime, Sharma, wife of Vibhishana, showed the place to him. Whereupon they went to the mouth of the excavation and having removed the stone which was placed upon it, rushed into it when Ravana was in deep meditation. The monkeys, having destroyed the Havan and the Ratha, tried their utmost to arouse him from his meditation, but they failed to do so. They struck him with their weapons, they threw rock and trees upon him, they gave blows to him, but all was in vain. At last, Sugriva caught hold of Mandodari and brought her in the excavation. She was frightened and violently cried. Her yell aroused the demon king from meditation, and as soon as he saw his wife there, and having found that the Havan was destroyed by the monkeys, he was greatly enraged and bade them all. The monkeys immediately returned to Suvela, leaving Ravana and his wife in the excavation. The demon king said to Mandodari, My dearest, do not grieve for what has happened to you. Pain and pleasure are made for us mortal beings, and we must experience them according to their turns. Now I am going to fight with Rama. I will either kill myself or kill Rama. If I return to you, it is all right. And if I be killed, these are the last words I address to you. So saying, the demon king took the remaining demons with him and commenced operations when all the monkeys threw at him innumerable mountains, rocks, and trees, but Ravana cut them off in no time and bade them all. Finding that Ravana could not be overcome by the monkeys, Rama immediately attacked him when the demon king let off a serpent weapon which produced innumerable serpents and stung the monkeys. Rama let off a Garuda weapon which produced Garudas and killed all the serpents. Rama let off a rain weapon which produced the rain and flowed the demons when Ravana let off a wind weapon which produced the wind and dispersed the rain. Rama let off a mountain weapon which produced mountains and stopped the wind. Ravana let off a diamond weapon which produced diamonds and broke all the mountains. Ravana let off innumerable arrows at Rama at one and the same time, but the latter cut them off with one arrow. Ravana then let off a very powerful arrow which struck Rama and passed through his left foot, when all the monkeys got enraged and began to throw arrows, rocks, trees at Ravana, but the latter bravely broke them with his weapons. Ravana fought from his chariot and Rama from the ground. Finding that the prince was in a bad position, Indra, the chief of the gods in heaven, sent his chariot for him, which he mounted and began to fight with his enemy. They both were very powerful and fought with each other for 7 days and 7 nights without cessation. Rama then let off 4 arrows and killed the horses of Ravana. The demon king then immediately put other horses to his chariot when Rama let off an arrow of the size of the half moon, which Ravana cut off with the like arrow. Whereupon Rama let off a sharp weapon which struck the chest of the demon king and cut off his 10 heads, but to the surprise of all, the heads again fixed themselves to him. Rama again cut them off, but they again fixed themselves to Ravana. Rama, having failed to separate the heads from Ravana, all the monkeys were alarmed. When the charioteer Matuli said to Rama, Ravana has got a phial full of nectar in his breast. Just let off an arrow at his breast and break the phial, so that the heads will not fix themselves to the demon king over and over again. Hearing this from Matuli, Rama discharged a powerful weapon called Agastidata and broke the phial in his breast. And immediately after he cut off his 10 heads and killed him on the spot. Vibhishana lamented for his brother, the demon king, when Rama consoled and pacified him. Mandodari and his other wives came and violently cried for their husband. Vibhishana consoled them and sent them to their palaces. The funeral ceremony of Ravana was then performed by his brother, and soon after, Rama installed him in the throne of Lanka. All the demons acknowledged him as their king and paid homage to him. All the gods and kings imprisoned by Ravana were released from the prison there. Rama visited them all and heartily embraced them. Rama then asked Maruti and Vibhishana to bring Sita from the Ashoka forest, whereupon they immediately went to the forest and informed her of what had happened to Ravana and said to her, we are desired by Rama to bring you to Subela. Please, therefore, prepare yourself to accompany us. Sita, having prepared herself to accompany them, Vibhishana seated her in a sibika and brought her to Subela. She went to embrace Rama affectionately when the latter said to her, do not come near me. I have set you at liberty in order that the people may not call me cruel. You have been for so many years in Lanka, and I do not know what you have done during that time. I cannot now admit you into my house. You can go wherever you like. I have no objection to it whatsoever. Hearing these words from Rama, Sita was overwhelmed with grief and replied, I am unfortunate. For nothing you have taken trouble for me. For nothing you have given trouble to all the monkeys. If you do not like to admit me into your house, take your sword and cut my head. I have led a pious and moral life, and I shall presently satisfy you about it. Having addressed these words to Rama, she requested all the monkeys to arrange a pile of wood and set fire to it. All the monkeys accordingly arranged a pile and set fire to it. Sita went near it and loudly exclaimed in the presence of all the monkeys and demons, all know that I was carried off and detained by Ravana. I say that I led a pious and moral life during the time I was in the kingdom of the demon. There is the fire ready to receive me. I shall now throw myself into it, and if what I say is false, I shall be burned in it, and if what I say is true, I shall come out of the fire unhurt. So saying, Sita threw herself into the fire and disappeared for about 3 hours. Rama, Lakshmana, and all the monkeys grieved for her and stood near the pile, bewildered. But in the meantime, the god of fire brought her out of it, well decorated with ornaments, and gave her in charge of Rama, who heartily embraced her.